United States and the First Lady, accompanied by Dr. Ray Alexander Minter.
Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening and welcome to the White House for this historic and auspicious occasion. I want to thank the members of Congress who are here, members of the administration, and all who are part of this occasion, all of our honored guests. This is an historic occasion, not just for the President and the White House, but for all Americans. I am so pleased that this day has come. Tonight, we will present this magnificent landscape, Sun Dunes at Sunset, Atlantic City, by Henry Ossawa Tanner, as part of the permanent White House art collection. This important day would not have arrived without the effort and commitment of numerous men and women across our country. We owe thanks to Edward Bell. And Mr. Bell, would you stand so that we can thank you? Mr. Bell was one of the approximately 1.5 million visitors who come to the White House every year. And while he was touring the White House and appreciating the magnificent surroundings that our visitors are able to see, he noticed that we did not have any art by any of our great African American artists in the White House collection. He took the initiative to write to the President to suggest that that be remedied. I must say, for anyone who thinks one person cannot make a difference or that one vote does not count, Mr. Bell is living proof to the contrary. We are also very grateful to the Tanner family, in particular to his grandniece, whom we will hear from in a few minutes, Dr. Ray Alexander Minter, for making this painting available to the White House permanent collection. I'm also very grateful to the Committee for the Preservation of the White House and the White House Endowment Fund, who agreed immediately with the President and me that we wanted to be able to include something from Mr. Tanner in our collection. I also want to recognize another special guest in the audience. Lois Maylou Jones is here, whose own artistic genius was influenced by Mr. Tanner and whose works represent some of the finest American art of this century. And Ms. Jones, will you also stand as well? Thank you. As those of you who are collectors and lovers of American art know, paintings of the magnitude of sand dunes are hard to come by. Often they belong to art lovers who do not wish to part with the art they have collected. And many others are already part of permanent exhibits or museum collections. I'm not sure we would have located sand dunes without the considerable talent and help of two experts in African American art, the scholar, teacher, and painter, David Driscoll, who is with us today. And Mr. Driscoll, would you please stand so we can recognize you as well? Mr. Driscoll has done as much as anyone to enlarge the world's appreciation of African American art and the role of the Black artist in American society. It is also appropriate this evening that we pay tribute to the late Sylvia Williams, the former director of the Museum of African Art at the Smithsonian Institution. It was Sylvia Williams, joined by David Driscoll, who worked tirelessly with the White House curator Rex Scouten to ensure that the White House acquired a painting emblematic of the talent and power of our nation's greatest African-American artists. Sylvia Williams was known throughout the art world for her keen wit, generous spirit, and most of all, her artistic judgment. In the words of Secretary Hyman of the Smithsonian, she was a woman who believed in standards, not limits. I am personally grateful for her help, and as the president of the Association of Art Museum Directors, she worked with us for the White House Sculpture Exhibition. Her commitment to art and her great appreciation of art will be missed, and we are so thankful that she could have been involved in this project. From this day on, sand dunes will be on view for the thousands and millions of visitors who, like Mr. Bell, walk through the White House. They will come every day, bringing their own hopes and dreams, often with children in tow, to tell them that this is also their house. And each person who sees this magnificent painting will be reminded that talent always has the power to transcend prejudice. Before we unveil the painting, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you a woman who is as responsible as any of us for this evening, the grandniece of Mr. Tanner, Dr. Ray Alexander Minter.
Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, I know that I speak both for myself and the members of the Tanner family who are assembled here to say that we are profoundly moved by the occasion of the unveiling of the landscape, Sand Dunes at Sunset, Atlantic City, by my grand-uncle, Henry Ossawa Tanner, and its installation in the Green Room. There are several people whom I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank for making this occasion a reality. The first, of course, the First Lady, Mrs. Hillary Rodham Clinton, whose sensitivity to the need for all segments of the American people to be represented in this most important collection of American art, to recognize immediately this significant omission from the White House collection, and to move with the concern, compassion, and knowledge to rectify the omission. And a special word of thanks and appreciation to Mr. Rex Scouten, the White House curator, who carefully and skillfully guided the process to fruition. But the person whom I want most to thank is my mother, Sadie Tanner Marcel Alexander, the niece of Henry Ossawa Tanner. It was she who bequeathed the painting to me, which we see tonight. My paean to her is based largely on the intangible things she left me. She had a long and abiding sense of history, for while she could not have foreseen this occasion, she imbued my sister and me with a sense of our roots. Before it was fashionable, she maintained in her professional life her husband's name, Alexander, her paternal family name, Marcel, and her maternal family name, Tanner. My sister and I knew from an early age the contributions of these two families, Tanner and Marcel, to African-American history, and later the contributions of my father and mother to this body of work. She would not have been able to presage this occasion, but in her wisdom, she made it possible by protecting and preserving this Tanner legacy. As a child and a young woman before I left my parents' home, I remember my mother drawing the curtains in the living room and parlor so that the rays of the sun would not reach the Tanner paintings. This was well before we knew the effects of the sun's rays on both humankind and the material culture. I recall my mother saying that Tanner's parents and my great-grandfather and grandmother, Bishop and Mrs. Benjamin Tucker Tanner, tried often, unsuccessfully, to find places for Henry to paint where he would be unburdened by race. Once at a place which they rented for him outside of Philadelphia, he was so badly treated by a storekeeper that he fled, vowing never to return. In Atlantic City, he found solace and peace. And while he left America in 1891 saying he could not paint and fight prejudice at the same time, he never became an expatriate, for he loved America and realized its promise. My family and I are indeed proud that a Tanner painting, and particularly this Tanner painting, has been chosen as the first African-American addition to this remarkable collection. Sand Dunes at Sunset, Atlantic City's inclusion in the White House Permanent Art Collection provides yet another example of the administration's determination to honor the pledge to diversity and to make sure that the full artistic expression of the American template is represented. We believe that Henry Ossawa Tanner would be humbled by this historic moment. Thank you.
Let me just say very briefly, I want to thank Dr. Ray Alexander Mentor for her moving tribute and for making this possible. I want to thank her mother for taking good care of this picture. Thank you, Edward Bell, for being a good American citizen and asking questions, which is what we need our citizens to do. Thank you, Rex Scouten. And thank you, David Driscoll. Thank you to the late Sylvia Williams. I'd also like to thank my wife for her insistence that we take up Mr. Bell's suggestion. Tonight is a happy night for us to be here, to be a part of this. Tonight reminds us in all humility that we are simply tenants here, passing through. Even though we're trying to get our lease renewed at the moment. There is, in any case, a limit on the lease, and it's a very short period in the very long life of our great country. And in so many ways, everything that represents America, sooner or later, has to come to represent a better America, has to come to reflect our ongoing journey. And I was thinking tonight that Thomas Jefferson, whose statue looks directly into the second floor oval room right above us here, would be smiling. You know, on the memorial, they have that wonderful quote that when Jefferson said, "When I think of slavery, I tremble to think that God is just." He knew better. And it took us a long time to come to grips with all that. And this magnificent artist whom we honor tonight had to live in the afterwash of the Civil War and our continuing struggle to come to grips with our obligations as a people, both moral and constitutional. Now, a long time after that, and too long in coming, this great painting will hang in the green room. And over 1.5 million visitors will see it every year. Most of them, but not all of them, will be Americans. Of the Americans, they will come from more than African American and Caucasian American stock. They will now come from a myriad of racial and ethnic and religious groups. But when they stop in the green room and look at this beautiful work of art, they will know that America here in the People's House is moving again toward its ultimate destiny and living closer to its ideals. To all of you who have made that possible, I thank you. I thank you for being here tonight, and I ask you now to join us in the reception. Thank you very, very much.